At the NH Winter Nationals, a Chevrolet Chevelle sexploded past the finish line, only to be disqualified moments later. Why? Because its engine was deemed too dangerous to exist. This is the untold story of Chevrolet's Big Rat, an engine so powerful it sparked corporate espionage, deadly rivalries, and a government conspiracy to erase it from history. Chevrolet engine banned. Too powerful for public, with tales of rebellion, betrayal, and corporate warfare. From the mid-S and nearly into the S, American car manufacturers built a stunning variety of overhead valve engines for passenger cars. From the tiny cubic-inch Ford Windsor to the mighty cubic-inch Cadillac, the era that began with the small block Chevrolet and ended with the Chevy Mobile scandal of the late S could rightly be dubbed the golden age of the American the Fifth. It all started in the S, a time when muscle cars were booming and a war was raging between automobile companies. However, Chevrolet was always ahead of the curve, so they decided to take their iconic big block. Van Crank It Up to the Big Block was introduced as an upgrade for the L Chevrolet model, and it was a carefully crafted powerhouse designed to outperform its rivals with a displacement of cabin, or 4 layers, earned it the unofficial metric nickname in global markets. In Australia, where GM Holden used in muscle cars like the Monero, it was cheekily called the Yank Tank engine. It was one of the largest engines ever made by Chevrolet at the time. That's where the magic began. There wasn't just an engine. It was a declaration of war by Chevy engineers. A secret arms race against Ford's Cobra Jet and Dodge's Hemi. But the Big Rat had a dark secret. We pushed the beyond sanity, the cast iron block. It could handle nitroglycerin, but Ford had spies. They'd show up at drag strips with tape measures trying to reverse engineer our headers. What made this so revolutionary wasn't just its size. It was how Chevrolet used that size to create an engine that combined sheer power with performance. The engine had magic built into its soul. This engine type was known for its ability to deliver smooth, consistent power. And when it came to raw muscle, the VAVS, the engine of choice. But Chevrolet didn't just stop at the basic engine configuration. They turned it up a notch by using advanced materials and engine components that were built to withstand the intense forces generated by a high-performance engine. One of the key factors behind the Big Block's success was its use of a cast iron engine block. Cast iron is heavy and durable, meaning it can beat high horsepower and torque without cracking or failing. As the dominated drag strips, Detroit's boardrooms turned toxic. Chevy's own execs feared the engine's power would bankrupt them. EPA whistleblowers reveal a clandestine meeting, and gentlemen, this engine is a liability. We need it gone, or Washington will shut us all down. But then the real reason for the ban emerged. Leaked documents showed GM colluded with the EPA to scapegoat the hiding their own failure to meet emissions. The Big Rat was sacrificed to save Chevrolet's profits. If you were behind the wheel of a car with the Big Block, you had a true road monster on your hands. But then disaster struck. At the Daytona, a modified Corvette flipped at MPH, killing its driver. The media blamed Chevrolet. The truth, a Ford plant worker later confessed to tampering with the fuel line. How did it turn raw size into real-world street dominance? Well, something crucial to the performance of this engine was the compression ratio. The standard Big Block engine had a compression ratio of 2. What does this mean? A higher compression ratio means the engine compresses the air-fuel mixture more before igniting it, creating a more efficient and powerful combustion. The S relatively high compression ratio gave it an extra edge over competitors and made it even more powerful. At the Daytona, a Chevrolet Corvette, extra powered by a racing, was poised to dominate until its engine mysteriously failed on lap. Years later, a retired Ford mechanic confessed in an interview that a rival team had bribed a pit crew member to sugar the gas tank, a classic sabotage tactic. Chevrolet quietly pulled factory support for race engines after the incident. The mechanic's identity remains anonymous, and Ford never acknowledged involvement. But where exactly did this beast roar to life? You'll recognize some of these names. Chevrolet made sure that the Big Block engine was available in some of the most iconic American muscle cars of all time. Cars like the Chevrolet Chevelle SS, the Chevrolet Corvette, and the Chevrolet Camaro received the turning them into even more powerful versions of already legendary vehicles. Imagine sitting in the driver's seat of a Chevelle SSA car that was already fast, but now with the kind of power that could leave every other car on the street in the dust. The S death sparked rebellion. Mechanics built underground outlaw engines, while drivers like Mad Mike Kovac risked prison to race them. We'd swap vangs, hide engines, and pickup trucks. Cops chased us through cornfields. It was war. But then the FBI raided a Michigan garage, seizing illegal S. One mechanic, Ronnie Drake, vanished. His fate still unknown. The Chevrolet Corvette, America's sports car. Throw the big block into the mix, and you have an entirely new level of performance. The Corvette was already sleek and stylish, but it became a supercar in its own right. You could feel the difference as soon as you hit the gas. Let's not forget about the Camaro and SS models. Under the hood, these cars were more than just sharp looks and great handling. They were absolute monsters on the street. Having a powered Camaro meant you were part of an exclusive club of drivers who had one of the most powerful engines available at the time. Not many people could say they owned a muscle car that could go head-to-head with anything on the street and come out on top. After the S-ban, underground mechanics began building outlaw engines with forged vangs and smuggled parts. The most infamous operation was Rat Motor City, a Detroit garage run by ex-Chevy engineer Larry the Rat Duvall, who modified to run on methanol and bypass emissions controls. The FBI raided Duvall's shop, seizing engines and arresting his team. Rumors persist that Duvall hit a golden block in the Michigan wilderness, still undiscovered. As you can imagine, having an engine like this was not cheap. When it first hit the market, it wasn't an engine you'd find in a budget car. This was a high-performance premium engine that came with a premium price tag. If you were to get a car equipped with the UD, you have to shell out a lot more money than the base models. Today, the price of a big block engine is no small matter either. Classic cars with the big block under the hood, it's like the Chevrolet SSCAN, go for anywhere between $1 depending on the condition and rarity of the car. If you're looking just for the engine itself, a fully restored big block could cost anywhere from $1 to $1 depending on how it's been maintained. Even the Chevrolet Impala SS, which was more known for its size and luxury, turned into an absolute powerhouse when equipped with the big block. The Impala's smooth, comfortable ride was now paired with enough muscle to make it a road warrior. But the fame wasn't just about the cars. It was also about what these cars represented. The big block was part of the muscle car revolution, a time when American automotive engineering was at its peak. It was a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and power. These were cars that you could hear coming from miles away. Cars that made a statement wherever they went. John DeLorean, yes, that DeLorean, clashed violently with GM brass over the AS head of Chevrolet, and he fought to keep the engine alive. But GM's cost-cutting CEO Richard Garenberg ordered its termination to focus on fuel-efficient models. DeLorean later wrote in his memoir, "They didn't just they murdered the soul of Chevrolet." DeLorean quit GM in calling it a corporation of cowards, and later built his own stainless steel icon with a VOF course. So why was such an iconic engine banned? This is where things get a little interesting. As the S rolled in, a few things started to happen that would change the landscape of muscle cars forever. The oil crisis hit, and suddenly gas prices soared. At the same time, there were increasing concerns about the environmental impact of cars. Governments started putting stricter regulations on emissions in cars like the big block, which were big, heavy, and incredibly thirsty, became targets. The thing is, muscle cars were gas guzzlers, plain and simple. The big block wasn't built with efficiency in mind. It was built for pure power. That meant it was burning through a lot of fuel, much more than what was considered acceptable by the new standards. On top of that, the emissions from such powerful engines were much higher than what the government would allow. By the mid-S, lawmakers were getting serious about pushing for cleaner, more efficient vehicles. GM paid millions in fines, but was sacrificed as a scapegoat. Conspiracy theorists claim executives intentionally killed the engine to avoid deeper scrutiny of other models. They didn't ban it because it was dirty, they banned it because it got caught. By the big block was essentially killed off. For the true muscle car enthusiasts, this marked the end of an era. The powerful engines that once ruled the streets were being replaced by smaller, more fuel-efficient engines. And performance was taking a back seat to the need for fuel economy and environmental concerns. But you should remember one thing. This was not an engine produced for economic drivers. This was a drag race level street legal engine made for petrol heads. So when this gem of an engine was essentially banned by the EPA, it was, of course, a big loss to the car community. Even for a big engine like this, there was some fierce competition. At the time when the Chevrolet was roaring onto the scene, Ford wasn't sitting on the sidelines. Ford had already established a strong presence in the muscle car world with their Mustang and Thunderbird. But the Cobra Jet engine took things to another level. Introduced in the Cobra Jet was one of Ford's most aggressive power plants. Slightly smaller at cubic in, the Cobra Jet made horsepower but couldn't quite match the brute force of the Still. It packed a hefty punch with horsepower and a pound-feet torque rating, though it wasn't quite as powerful as the big block in terms of raw horsepower. The Ford Cobra Jet engine still made an impact with its own unique style and performance characteristics. The engine made waves when it was paired with the Mustang Mach and Thunderbird, producing a mean, snarling machine that could take on any street challenge. However, Ford's Cobra Jet had some drawbacks, especially in terms of reliability and fuel consumption. While it had serious muscle and was built for the long haul with its sturdy cast iron block, the often required more maintenance, and its high revving performance meant it wasn't quite as durable in long-term use. Still, the Cobra Jet was a powerful adversary to the, especially in drag racing circles, where the Ford engine was known to shine due to its excellent low-end torque. The driver who went rogue crazy, Joe Weatherly secretly partnered with Chevy to test a nitrous injected in when NASCAR banned the setup. Weatherly allegedly threatened to expose Chevrolet's clandestine support of nitrous in private drag races. Weatherly's notes on the nitrous system vanished, and Chevy engineers were abruptly reassigned. Was it an accident or a corporate cover-up? GM faced intense pressure from the EPA to meet new emission standards. Instead of abandoning the Chevrolet engineers, allegedly faked emissions test data by using clean prototype engines for certification while production engines spewed unregulated pollution. This scheme, later dubbed the Chevy-mobile scandal, a nod to the S-defeat device era, was buried until a whistleblower leaked internal memos while the big rat couldn't survive the emissions era. Its legacy lives on in crate engine builds and resto mods today, proving that legends never die, they just get louder. The big block still lives on in classic car circles with enthusiasts restoring and preserving vehicles that still house this powerhouse. If you're lucky enough to find one of the Chevelles models, or a Corvette from the S, with the U looking at more than just a car, you're holding a piece of automotive history. And Chevy engineers reportedly built a plus cubic inch big rat prototype to replace the SZ. The engine allegedly produced plus horsepower, but GM executives destroyed the blueprints to avoid reigniting the horsepower wars. A grainy Polaroid of the engine surfaced in authenticity unproven. By the big rat was extinct. But what if it hadn't been banned? What if Chevy's engineers had unleashed the S successor, the rumored cubic inch Godzilla block? And what if Ronnie Drake's lost prototypes still exist, buried in a Detroit junkyard? Some say you can hear the big rats growl at midnight. While the Chevrolet Big Block's legacy is steeped in power and innovation, its history is also riddled with scandals, corporate intrigue, and high-stakes conflicts. What if the FBI still has Duval's outlaw engines locked in a warehouse? What if DeLorean's manifesto is buried in a Detroit vault? And what if the big rat never truly died?